Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's pretty heavy but very important, and that is anxiety and depression in the context of advanced cancer. We're going to be looking at this resource called Cancer Survival Toolbox, specifically Track 4, which has some survivor stories about managing these really, really difficult emotions. Now, even if you're not personally facing a cancer diagnosis. Understanding these challenges can really help build empathy and give us all some insights into dealing with stress in general. We're going to be hearing from folks like Daryl, who has advanced lung cancer, and Sonia, who made the tough choice to opt for palliative care. Their experiences offer some pretty powerful lessons about resilience.
It is really remarkable how much these personal stories resonate, even if we haven't gone through the same things. They really tap into these universal feelings of uncertainty, facing the unknown, which I think we can all relate to on some level.
That's so true. And Daryl, for example, describes his experience as an uphill battle. What really struck me about his story wasn't just the diagnosis itself, but how he found ways to cope with that feeling of being overwhelmed. He talks about using relaxation techniques from the toolbox. So I'm curious what makes these techniques so effective, especially when someone is dealing with the stress of a cancer diagnosis.
Well, it's really fascinating how our bodies react to anxiety. We go into this fight or flight mode, releasing stress hormones like cortisol. And relaxation techniques actually work by counteracting that response. You can think of it as like hitting the pause button on that stress cascade. They help slow down your heart rate, ease muscle tension, and just create a sense of calm. And this isn't just helpful for cancer patients. Really, anyone facing a stressful situation can benefit from these techniques.
So it's about giving your nervous system a break, essentially. In the toolbox, they mention a whole range of techniques, things like muscle relaxation, visualization, even things like yoga and prayer. It seems like there's a real emphasis on finding what works for each individual.
Absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach at all. You have to experiment and see what resonates with you personally. What I find really encouraging is that they mention oncology nurses, like Denise, who are actually trained to teach these techniques to patients. It really speaks to a more holistic view of patient care, addressing the emotional side alongside the physical all it.
I love that it's recognizing that emotional well-being is such a crucial part of healing and coping. Now, Sonia's story brings another layer to this discussion, which is the issue of depression. She decided to forego experimental surgery and chose palliative care instead. And you can imagine she was hit hard emotionally. What are some of the factors that contribute to depression in this type of situation?
Yeah, it's often a complex interplay of factors. I mean, the diagnosis itself can trigger these feelings of grief and loss, uncertainty about the future. And then on top of that, you have the potential chemical imbalances caused by the cancer or its treatment, which can directly impact mood. And then there's also the emotional weight of facing a life-limiting illness, the anxieties about the future, the impact on loved ones, and just the unknown. All of these things can really contribute to depression, making it a real challenge for patients like Sonia.
It really highlights the importance of open communication and seeking support. In Sonia's case, it was her husband who recognized she needed help and reached out to a social worker.
That's such a critical point. Social workers play such a vital role in supporting cancer patients and their families. They're trained to address the emotional and practical challenges that come with a diagnosis. They can provide counseling, connect patients with support groups, even help with things like caregiving arrangements.
It's like having an advocate and a guide through this incredibly difficult journey. And it sounds like medication can also play a role. Sonia, for instance, found that antidepressants helped improve not just her mood, but also her sleep and appetite.
That's right. Medication in conjunction with therapy and other supportive measures can make a significant difference for a lot of patients. Sometimes medication is necessary to address those physical symptoms, and this in turn can have a positive impact on mood and overall well-being. And this actually leads us nicely into the topic of palliative care, which is what Sonia chose to pursue.
Yeah, there's often this misconception that palliative care is only for, end-of-life situations, but it's really about focusing on comfort, pain management, and quality of life at any stage of a serious illness.
I think that's a really important point to clarify, because I think a lot of people associate palliative care with giving up, but it's not about that at all, is it? Not at all. It can be incorporated at any point in the journey, sometimes even alongside curative treatments. The goal is really to help patients live as fully as possible, despite their illness. And it's a team effort. Doctors, nurses, social workers, even chaplains, they all work together to address the patient's physical, emotional, and spiritual needs, as well as the needs of their families.
So it's about providing that holistic support system. That makes a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about something as complex as advanced cancer. This reminds me of something the social worker Linda mentioned in the Cancer Survival Toolbox, something called a distress thermometer. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, it's a surprisingly simple but effective tool. Basically, it's a scale from 0 to 10 that patients can use to rate their level of distress. Sometimes it's hard to put those feelings into words, especially when you're already feeling overwhelmed. So the distress thermometer gives patients a concrete way to communicate their needs to their healthcare team.
I can see how that would be so helpful, both for the patient and the healthcare providers. It takes the pressure off of trying to articulate these really complex emotions, and it ensures that emotional distress is given the same attention as physical symptoms.
Exactly. It's about empowering patients to advocate for their own well-being. And if someone is experiencing significant distress, Linda suggests reaching out to a social worker or visiting the website www.helpstartshere.org, which has a wealth of information and resources.
It sounds like there's a lot of support available if you know where to look. But I think it's also important to remember that these lessons aren't just for people dealing with cancer. How can our listeners apply these insights to their own lives, even if they aren't facing a serious illness?
That's a great question. What I find so fascinating is that these stories really transcend the specific context of cancer. They speak to these universal human experiences: fear, anxiety, searching for meaning in difficult circumstances. We all face challenges. We all experience loss. And we all need coping mechanisms to navigate those difficult times.
So these stories are almost like roadmaps, showing us different paths to resilience. We see the importance of seeking support, using available resources, advocating for our needs, and finding those moments of joy and connection even amidst hardship. And perhaps most importantly, they remind us that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel anxious, sad, or overwhelmed. Those emotions are part of the human experience.
Absolutely. And trying to suppress those emotions doesn't help. It's about acknowledging them, processing them, and seeking support when we need it. That's where true strength lies.
Now think about the distress thermometer for a moment.
Yeah.
It's a concept we can all apply to our life, isn't it? We can all benefit from regularly checking in with ourselves, assessing our emotional state, and taking action when needed.
I completely agree. It's like a mental health check-in. Ask yourself, how am I feeling today? What's causing me stress? And what steps can I take to manage that stress? It's about becoming more attuned to our own emotional well-being.
Just like Sonia's husband reached out for help. We can all reach out to loved ones, therapists, or support groups. We don't have to go through tough times alone. And let's not forget the power of those relaxation techniques. Muscle relaxation, guided imagery yoga. These are tools we can all incorporate into our daily lives to manage stress and create a sense of calm.
It's all about finding what works best for you and making self-care a priority.
And as Denise pointed out, taking care of our emotional well-being is just as important as taking care of our physical health. It's all connected. These survivor stories also remind us that even in the face of serious illness, life can still be meaningful, joyful, and full of love.
It's a powerful message of hope and resilience.
So true. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Think back to Daryl's description of his journey as an uphill battle. We all face our own metaphorical mountains in life, right?
Absolutely. Life is full of challenges, big and small.
But these stories remind us that even the steepest climbs are manageable, one step at a time. And sometimes those challenging journeys lead to the most profound growth and self-discovery. It's a reminder that within each of us lies an incredible capacity for strength, resilience, and hope.
And even in the darkest of times, there's always light to be found. It's about finding that inner strength and tapping into the resources available to us. We don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah, it's so powerful to be reminded that even amidst, those difficult climbs, there's still so much beauty to be found in life. And as we wrap up our deep dive into anxiety and depression in the context of advanced cancer, the biggest takeaway for me is that these are truly universal human experiences.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not about a specific diagnosis or situation. These feelings of anxiety, sadness, and the search for meaning in the face of hardship, they're all part of the shared human experience. And that's why I think these survivor stories resonate so deeply with us. They offer valuable lessons for all of us, regardless of our personal circumstances.
Yeah, they remind us of the power of open communication, the importance of seeking support from others, and the value of finding coping strategies that work for us as individuals. And sometimes just hearing someone else's story can make us feel less alone in our own struggles.
Absolutely. Sharing our experiences, both the good and the bad, can be incredibly healing, not just for ourselves, but for others as well.
So as we leave you today, we encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed. Think about your own go-to coping mechanisms when you're feeling stressed or anxious. Who are your sources of support? What brings you joy, even in the face of challenges?
And remember, resources like the distress thermometer and the website www.helpstartshere.org, which were mentioned in the Cancer Survival Toolbox, are available to everyone. They're valuable tools for navigating life's ups and downs.
That's right. It's about finding that inner strength and realizing that we don't have to face our challenges alone. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.